Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ella and welcome. On my channel, we talk about missing people, murders, and just creepy things. So as you can probably tell by the title of today's video, today we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Natalee Holloway. So we're just going to get right into the case. So Natalee was the oldest of two children, born to Dave and Beth Holloway on October 21st, 1986 in Memphis, Tennessee. In 1993, her parents got divorced and Natalee moved to Mountain Brook, Alabama with her mom, her brother, and her new stepdad. In May of 2005, Natalee graduated from Mountain Brook High School with honors. She was part of the National Honor Society and she was on the dance team, and she just had a lot of stuff at school that she was really involved in, and she had a lot of friends. She planned to attend the University of Alabama on a full scholarship and to pursue a medical career. So on Thursday, May 26, 2005, 125 seniors from Mountain Brook High School decided to go to Aruba for 5 days, and these 125 students included Natalee. And this was just like an unofficial graduation trip, a week getaway for them to all kind of celebrate their accomplishments and to get ready for the summer and then going to college the next fall. There were 7 adult chaperones along on this trip with the kids, but the person who organized it said the chaperones weren't supposed to be checking in with the kids every moves. You know, they were 18 now, they were graduated seniors, they were starting life as adults, so they felt that these chaperones didn't need to check in with everything they did, but it was more of just like a daily thing to check in and make sure everything was okay. Gerald Dompig, who ended up being the head investigator of Natalee's case later on, said that this group of kids was part of a lot of excessive partying and drinking. The Holiday Inn they were staying at actually told them, don't come back next year, you're not welcome, because they were that crazy and they were that much of a disruption to the other guests. Other students said Natalee would start every morning with a cocktail on the trip, and her friends said that her drinking was pretty excessive. There were a few days where it was reported that she didn't even show up to breakfast because she was either too drunk or too hungover from the night before, so she was drinking a lot on this trip. So the last time Natalee was seen by any of her friends or the other students from her school was at 1:30 a.m. on Monday, May 30th, as she was leaving a bar and nightclub. She left in a car from the nightclub with a 17-year-old student who was Dutch and studying in Aruba. His name was Joran Vandersloot, and his two friends who were brothers, 21-year-old Deepak Kalpo and 18-year-old Satish Kalpo. Natalee had a flight home later that day and she never arrived at the airport. When they went to check her hotel room, all her stuff was packed and it was there, but she wasn't. So it was like she had just disappeared. Immediately, the Aruban police started searching for her and just looking around. Nothing was found and no one knew where Natalee was. So as soon as her mom and her stepdad found out she missed her flight, they flew to Aruba on a private jet to look for her themselves. They knew who she had left this nightclub with and they gave his address to the police, which they had gotten from the hotel that she was staying at. Natalee's parents and the police went to question Vandersloot, but he denied knowing who she was. Later though, he did change his story to say that she wanted to go to the California lighthouse to see sharks. So he said they all went to the California lighthouse and then they dropped her off at her hotel around 2 a.m. And then he said as they were driving away, they saw that she was approached by a man wearing black who looked somewhat like a security guard. So immediately after this, all of these searches were conducted and put out for Natalee, and her mom decided to stay in Aruba throughout the searches. However, nothing was found. There were even reports that Natalee wasn't seen in the hotel lobby security footage from that night, but it's also unclear if it was even recording. There's a lot of contradicting reports, and Dompig, the head police officer, even said it's possible she didn't need to go through the lobby to get to her hotel room, so that could also explain why she isn't on the security footage. So at this point, the Aruban and United States police forces started working together and looking for Natalee. However, still nothing was found. On June 5th, Nick John and Abraham Jones were arrested under the suspicion of killing and kidnapping Natalee Holloway. They were former security guards from a nearby hotel, and they had previously gotten in trouble with the law for picking up women from different hotels, so they were just suspicious and this seemed like something they would do. There was never an official reason for why they were arrested that was released, but a lot of people believe it has something to do with what the Kalpo brothers and Vandersloot had said, and they possibly told the police that these were the people that had done it, maybe to throw them off their track, or maybe because they really did have something to do with it. However, they were both released on June 13 with no charges. They didn't really have anything to do with it. A few days earlier, on June 9th, the Kalpo brothers and Vandersloot were all arrested under suspicion of murder. Dompig had said that these three were intensely observed and everyone was tracking them and seeing how they were were acting, and they kind of come to the conclusion that they knew these guys knew something about what happened to Natalee, so they were arrested. Natalee's family was also pressuring the police into arresting them. They really thought that they had something to do with it. They were the last people known to be with their daughter, so they knew they must have known what happened to her or had done something to her. On June 17th, another man named Steve Gregory Crows was arrested based on information given by the other arrested men. And then on June 22nd, Vandersloot's father was also arrested, but he and Crows were both released the next day because there was a lack of evidence that they were involved. So during this time, Vandersloot and the Kalpoe brothers changed their story completely. They said that the Kalpoe brothers dropped Vandersloot and Natalee off at the Marriott Hotel Beach. The Kalpoe brothers left and went home, and then Vandersloot said he didn't harm Natalee, but he left her on the beach. He had school the next day, so he wanted to go home. It was a Monday morning, so he left her on the beach and he texted one of the Kalpoe brothers that he was walking home. And then there was also a third story that Vandersloot had said, and it was that he had been dropped off by the Kalpoe brothers at home, and then Natalee was supposed to be dropped off at her hotel by the Kalpoe brothers as well. The police didn't really take this third story to mean anything. They thought it was just made up and that Vandersloot was trying to get them to only look at the Kalpoe brothers. The police do believe the second story though, which is that Vandersloot and Natalee would have been dropped off at the beach and then the Kalpoe brothers went home, and whatever happened at the beach is just, that's what we don't know yet. So on July 4th, the Kalpoe brothers were released, but Vandersloot was kept in custody, and a lot of other searches were done for Natalee, but still nothing was found, which was another really weird thing about this case, is that it had been 2 months almost and her body hadn't turned up, no clues had turned up. All they really had were the Kalpoe brothers and Vandersloot to tell them what happened. So shortly after this, a gardener came forward with some information. He said that he had saw Vandersloot and the Kalpoe brothers from 2:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. on the day Natalee disappeared. It seemed like they were trying to stay hidden while they were driving around this pond by the Marriott Hotel. And then a jogger also claimed to have seen some men burying a blonde girl in a landfill, and this landfill was of course searched, but nothing was found. So these two witness statements didn't really get us anywhere. They didn't really mean anything. They didn't find any more clues, so there still wasn't really anything to go off at this point. The family offered rewards. At the highest, they were up to $250,000 for any information leading to Natalee or to Natalee's remains. At one point, a piece of duct tape with blonde hair was even found, but the hairs were tested and it turned out they didn't belong to Natalee. So this case was really just a lot of false leads, false information. It seemed like every time they got a lead, it wasn't her. On August 26th, the Kalpoe brothers were arrested again, along with 21-year-old Freddie Arambatis. Freddie had had a previous criminal record with convictions due to sexual assault, so he was a high suspect for this, and the Kalpoe brothers and him were supposedly involved in Natalee's case somehow. At the time, there was no official reasoning released for why the Kalpoe brothers were arrested, but Dom Pig later had said it was an unsuccessful attempt at trying to pressure them into confessing. And on September 3rd, all suspects, including Vandersloot, were released as long as they would still be available to the police when they wanted them. But on September 14th, all of these regulations were dropped. All of the men were just free to go and were no longer arrested. After he was released, Vandersloot did a lot of interviews, again changing his story. He now said that he was on the beach with Natalee and she wanted him to stay, but he had school the next morning, so he had to go, which is kind of what he said before, but now he said the Kalpoe brothers had come back and gotten him and they all just left Natalee there. The Kalpoe brothers' lawyer, though, said that this isn't true. The Kalpoes were at home sleeping and they did not see Vandersloot after they dropped Natalee and him off of that beach that night. So that seemed like the story that they were sticking to now, was that second original story that Natalee and Vandersloot were at the beach and the Kalpoe brothers went home. So Vandersloot stuck to this story now, and he said he didn't tell it at first because he was ashamed for leaving Natalee at the beach at such a late hour in the middle of the night, and he assumed she'd turn up in the next few days, so he didn't want to give that story, supposedly because he was just ashamed of leaving her there. In March and April of 2006, the FBI searched the coast of Aruba for Natalee's body. It wasn't found. Nothing was found. So Dom Pig, the head investigator, shortly after this left the case, but before he did, he stated that he did not believe that Natalee was murdered that night. He thought that she had died from something such as alcohol poisoning or a drug overdose, and that it was just covered up by the people she was with that night. He also said Aruba had used 40% of their police budget on this case, and that is so much money to spend on one case. So it's crazy how much they put into this case for nothing to be found. Don Pig says there's evidence that Natalee was on drugs, but her parents strongly deny it. They say there's no way she would be on drugs or ever use drugs, but of course she was on vacation. She was 18, she just graduated. People do a lot of things that their parents wouldn't expect. I don't think that their opinion is the most reliable in this situation, so I agree with this theory that she probably died from drug overdose or alcohol poisoning. On April 11th, 2006, Dave Holloway, Natalee's dad, published a book hoping to bring more light to her case and hoping to just keep her case alive. It had been almost a year now, so you know, the farther you get away from the time a person disappears, the less likely it is that they're going to turn up ever. So he was just really trying to keep people's minds on Natalee, and hopefully if anyone read it and had any information, they would come forward. On April 15th, 2006, a new suspect, Jeffrey Van Cromvoigt, was arrested under suspicion of dealing narcotics that possibly had been involved with Natalee, and that could have been the way she got them. However, he was released on April 25th, and then another man was arrested for the same suspicions, but he was also released the next day. On May 17th, another suspect, Guido Weaver, was arrested in the Netherlands under the suspicion of Natalee's murder, but he also was released. So there's a lot of just random people, it seems, being arrested that they're suspecting, and I think it's honestly because they don't know what else to do. The three main suspects, there was no evidence to prove that they killed Natalee or knew what happened to her, so they were really just starting to look at all these other options and, you know, just questioning everyone they could. So because of this last suspect being from the Netherlands actually took over this case for a little bit. The final investigation team ended up being an Aruban Dutch team, and they were the ones who were really on this case looking for Natalee. In April of 2007, Vandersloot actually published a book saying that he's sorry for his initial lies and his initial fake story when he was first questioned, but he still claims innocence and says he doesn't know what happened to Natalee. On April 27th, 2007, Vandersloot's home was searched and nothing significant is found. And on May 12th, the Calpo brothers' home was searched and also nothing else was found. So Vandersloot and the Calpo brothers were once again arrested on November 21st, 2007, this time under the suspicion of manslaughter and causing serious bodily harm to Natalee, which ultimately led to her death, so drugs or alcohol. So now they were all arrested again, these three main suspects. Still, the police really thought this was probably who it was, or they knew something. So Dave Holloway, her dad, was involved in another search that would go deeper into the ocean than any search before, but it was ultimately abandoned in February of 2008 due to lack of funding, and nothing was found. You know, the searches were starting to die down. People were starting to think that she was never going to be found, and when they started a new search, nothing was found, so the funding would go down. And the sad reality was just they couldn't really fund these searches for Natalee anymore. They had spent so much of their money on her and nothing at all had been found. No clues, no evidence, nothing. So it was almost like they just had it, her family had to come to terms with the fact that she may never be found. So November 30th, the Calpo brothers were released due to lack of evidence, and Vandersloot followed a few weeks later. For them to be arrested again, the police were going to have to find some solid evidence, because all three of them had been arrested 3 times, and all of the times they had been released due to lack of evidence. So there was really no way they were going to get a warrant for their arrest a 4th time. On December 18th, 2007, Natalee Holloway's case was officially closed because there was just nothing to go off of. All of the suspects were set free. There was no other evidence or clues, and it was really just a cold case. However, everything changed a few months later. On January 31st, 2008, Peter R. de Vries, a Dutch crime reporter, had claimed that he had solved Natalee's case and he would be releasing a documentary film on it. And he said, in this were going to be confessions from Vandersloot saying what happened to Natalee. This same day, Natalee's case was reopened. And on February 3rd, the film about Natalee was released, and in it they showed clips of Vandersloot smoking marijuana and then saying he was with Natalee when she started shaking and becoming unresponsive. He said he tried to save her but was unsuccessful, and then he called a friend who hid her body. Now, Vandersloot said that everything he said on these tapes in this documentary, he said, well, he was extremely high on marijuana, so none of it was true. He was just making up random things, again saying what this guy wanted to hear, and he denied all of it, said it was all false, and once again claimed his innocence. The Aruban police wanted to arrest him again but were unable to get a warrant for his arrest for lack of any solid evidence that he was really involved in this this. And the following year, Vandersloot was questioned a lot by a lot of people. The main possibility that most authorities were considering now was that Natalee was actually sold into human trafficking and Vandersloot had something to do with it. And I think this would make sense. I think if she was sold into human trafficking, that would explain why her body was never found, even with all of these searches. And you know, it just seems like the perfect situation for it. It was just this girl with 3 men just alone, and it would have been super easy for them to do anything like that. So on March 29th, 2010, which is a few years later, Vandersloot actually contacts Natalee's mom. He contacts her lawyer and he says, "I will tell you where Natalee is, I know, if you give me some money." So obviously Beth and her lawyer reported this to the FBI immediately, and the FBI actually decided, we're gonna go through with this transaction and see what he's trying to do. So the information that Vandersloot gave on Natalee's body was deemed false because the place where he said that she wasn't built at the time of her disappearance. So because of this, he was arrested for wired fraud. He was trying to just scam Natalee's family into giving him money when he was just telling them a random location where her body wasn't even at, because it wouldn't have been possible. So he was arrested finally again, and this time they actually had something on him. Whether it was related to Natalee or not, he did try to scam this family. So moving on May 30th, 2010, exactly 5 years to the day of when Natalee disappeared, 21-year-old Stephanie Flores Ramirez was reported missing in Lima, Peru. She was found dead 3 days later in a hotel room that belonged to Vandersloot. He confessed, saying he got really angry when she went on his computer without permission, and supposedly she had found some information on his computer that could link him back to Natalee and being involved in Natalee's case, so he had gotten so angry and he killed her. So the Peru police force and the Aruban police force, they didn't really get along very well. They weren't very cooperative. Unfortunately, whatever Vandersloot would have known or been connected to Natalee with the Stephanie Flores Ramirez case wasn't able to be used in the Natalee Holloway case. Vandersloot pled guilty to the murder of Ramirez and was sentenced to 28 years in prison. And in June of 2011, Dave Holloway filed a petition to get Natalee legally declared dead, and her mother Beth, of course, wanted to fight this. She wanted to do everything she could to look for Natalee. Ultimately, what happened is Dave Holloway's petition went through and Natalee was legally declared dead on January 12th, 2012. And this is where Natalee's case ends. It's just a cold case now. So Vandersloot, he's in jail regardless of if he was involved in Natalee's case or not. He did kill another woman, so he's in jail. I believe the Calpos still live their normal life. I didn't really see anything on them. Beth, Natalee's mom, still hopes to find new information, still to this day is looking for her daughter, and Dave Holloway kind of just has come to closure with it. He had his daughter legally declared dead, remembering Natalee, of course, but he is happy that her case is closed and that she is declared dead. So let me know what you guys think in the comments about this case. This is a little different case than the other ones I've done because it's really a cold case. It's a really unsolved case. So my personal theory is that Vandersloot killed her, or Vandersloot gave her too many drugs and she overdosed while she was with him, and then he did actually give his body to the friend. So what he said while he was high, that's what I believe. It just makes sense. The amount of times that Vandersloot tried to throw the police off his path and try to put it on the Calpo brothers or the information he had gave about any of the other men who were arrested, it just makes sense that he was involved, and he was the last known person with Natalee. But let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you guys did like this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you can see every single time I post a video. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!